Hi, this is Mr. Curtis, and today's topic is cell processes. Well, what does that mean? Well, what we're going to do today is look at what happens within a cell, and specifically, if this is a cell, how does stuff get into a cell, and how does stuff leave the cell? So what kind of stuff needs to go in? Well, you need to have food. You need to have oxygen, nutrients. What needs to go out? Waste and other things. So that's what our topic for today is how does stuff go into and how does stuff go out of a cell? Well, there's three ways in which things go into and out of a cell. There's diffusion, osmosis, active transport, and passive transport. What? Just a second. That's four ways? Four ways? Okay, so that's four ways. Let's start with diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of material from high to low. And notice that those brackets around there, those brackets mean concentration. So you have a tendency to be lazy sometimes. Well, scientists can be lazy too, and their way of being lazy instead of writing concentration all the time is to use these brackets. So here's another example of diffusion. If you take some food coloring and you drop it into water, it starts out and it's all together, but eventually what happens is all those molecules start to separate out, and they'll actually become quite even throughout the whole thing of water. That's an example of diffusion. Now, what if this were to happen? Let's say that good old Pepe Le Pew from our days with Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes, what if he came into our room? And who would smell him first? Well, nearby, far away, who would smell them first? Well, if this is our room, and let's say here's the door up there, if the skunk came in here, and you happen to be sitting here, and someone else is sitting over here, well, obviously, the stench from this is going to reach here first before it reaches there. Well, that's an example of diffusion. It's going from high concentration to low concentration. The next thing, osmosis. Osmosis is the diffusion of water through a membrane. So osmosis is just a special kind of diffusion. And the water, in this case, will move from high concentration to low concentration. And this mostly happens within a cell membrane. So here's an example. Let's say we have a plant cell. And on the inside of the cell, we have 97% water. And let's say that your young brother or sister decides to take some salt water and pour it on your mom's favorite indoor plant. Well, what's going to happen to this plant? Well, we all know what's going to happen. It's going to shrivel up. But how come? Well, the water is going to move from high concentration, here, to low concentration, right here. So the water will literally go out of the cell. And I would like you to draw this on your sheet. The water will move from where it's highest to where it's lowest. And then, as we all know, you're going to have this all shriveled up plant because it's lost its water. Here's another example. Let's say that we have a blood cell, and again, 97% water concentration on the inside. But let's say that we were to take this cell and place it into pure water. Well, which way is the water going to move this time? Well, here we have 100%, here's 97%, so it's going to go from high to low. It always moves from high to low. So this time, the water is going to move into the cell. And draw this on your sheet, please. Now, after a while, what will happen to that blood cell? It's going to literally blow up. The blood cell cannot handle that excess pressure, and it will blow up and burst. Here's another example of osmosis, and we'll be talking about this in class as well. Many times you may have heard of stories of people who get shipwrecked, or they're out at sea and they've run out of water and they end up and die. Well, what happens? Well, this is what happens. So bear with me on my drawing here, please. So let's say that this is a body. All right, yes, I know. Wonderful drawing. And then on the inside here, this is going to represent the intestines. And then let's say that this person were to drink some salt water. So we have now salt water, which is a relatively low concentration, and you have your body, which is a relatively high concentration. So the water is going to move from high to low. So if someone were to drink salt water, it actually makes them more thirsty. You're going to lose water quicker. And in fact, there's been a lot of stories over the year of people who have been shipwrecked. They get super, super thirsty and they'll drink salt water and they'll end up and die rather quickly after drinking the salt water. Well, you and I drink salt water and it doesn't hurt us. Well, we're not near death. These people who are near death will drink the salt water and it ends up killing them rather quickly. Okay, another example of water moving due to osmosis. And you can see on this side we have sucrose. Well, that's another word for sugar. So here we have a sugar and water concentration, and over here we just have water. So again, we have a relatively high concentration here, a relatively low concentration here. So water will move from high to low, just as the arrow shows. Active transport. This is the movement of materials across the membrane, but the cell uses energy to make it happen. And the cells will be taking in things like sugars and proteins which aren't very readily available. Here's another example of active transport, and here what we're seeing is a pump that brings sugar into a cell. So over here this represents the sugar pump, and here we have a molecule of glucose. And what happens is the body will use energy, that's this stuff here, ATP, will use energy to pump in that sugar, which normally would go the other way. So it's using energy to bring in nutrients. Now, passive transport is the same as diffusion, but the difference is it happens through a cell membrane. So I kind of argue that, well, it's kind of the same as diffusion. Yeah, it is the same, but only this time it's going through a cell membrane. And let me give you an example of that. So a pretty typical example is your lungs. Now, what I'm going to draw here is one lung, but really your lung is not one big air sac, it's millions of tiny little air sacs. I'm drawing it as one. And what happens here, you'll have carbon dioxide that your body makes, which will be a relatively high concentration. And the air that you breathe in will have carbon dioxide in it as well, but it's a relatively low concentration. So the carbon dioxide will move from high to low. So as you breathe in air, the carbon dioxide automatically will go into the air that you breathe from high to low. Now at the same time, which is kind of interesting, you also have oxygen that you breathe in. And the oxygen that you breathe in is relatively high concentration, and the oxygen levels in your blood are relatively low concentration. So, again, the oxygen, like the carbon dioxide, will move from high to low, only this time the arrows are going the other way. So every time that you breathe, two things are happening. The carbon dioxide is moving in, and the oxygen is moving out into your bloodstream. This is passive transport. Okay, so this ends our discussion of the 4 different ways in which things move within a cell. Make sure that you write down things in the briefs and also the summary, and we will see you next time.